We are back talking vintage sports from Nedick's at the Old Garden on 48th Street. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Nedick's is gone. The Old Garden is gone, but we are here. We have a terrific panel of co-hosts on the show tonight. Hal Bock is not here. He's got laryngitis, and his voice is slowly but surely recovering. But Alan Blumkin is here. George Case III is here. And last but certainly not least, David Hubler, the newest co-host. It's been 2 or 3 weeks on both shows, and you're fitting right into the network, David. We're delighted to have you.
Well, thank you. I feel at home, and I feel it's very comfortable to be here with all of you.
Good.
Same here.
Glad you're feeling that way because you fit right in. We're just a bunch of old guys that talk sports the way it was in the old days, and we have memories, and memories jog memories, and then those memories jog other memories. So we'll never run out of a myriad of things to discuss. This was a week where Syracuse, I don't know what they're calling themselves now and what they will be calling themselves.
Chiefs. They're the Chiefs.
Yeah, that's what they've been.
Syracuse Chiefs. I didn't know if they had changed that. They were the Chiefs for years when they were the Yankees Farm Club. But they become the Mets Farm Club. What's really interesting to me is that the Mets, like many teams, are now going to regionalizing their AAA club. In other words, now that if there's a call-up to be made in the event of an emergency, they don't have to go cross-country to Las Vegas. And as a Met fan, there were 2 or 3 times during the year where they could have used a key bench player who was simply unavailable, and it was an emergency situation. Happens a lot with catchers and, of course, middle-inning relief pitchers. You never know when your team is going to get blown out. And so I'm happy for that reason. But other than that, my old homie, Eric Chapman, is living up in Syracuse, has lived there for years, has developed an incredible kinship with the athletic community, and I wish he were on the show tonight. I invited him and hoping he'd show, but I think of him every time I think of Syracuse, and you guys remember the importance of Syracuse in the old NBA. We are New Yorkers pretty much. George is from the tri-state area. Jerseyites think of themselves as New Yorkers sometimes, don't they?
Well, you know what, Ralph, you mentioned that. They sort of do. From like Trenton North, they are Yankees fans. From Trenton South, they're Philadelphia fans. So I live just slightly south. So and I was lucky when I was a kid because where I lived in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, we were able to get all 3 New York channels and all 3 Philadelphia channels, so we watched all the games. And I can remember as a kid we had a tenor rotor on top of our roof, and my dad would say, well, we'll watch the Yankees games or the Dodgers or whatever, and we'll dial it up, and then if we wanted to watch the A's or the Phillies or the Sixers or Warriors or whatever it was, we'd turn the tenor rotor south toward Philly. So I had the luxury of seeing all of them.
What type of community is Trenton? Is it basically a working community? Well,
Trenton was at one time a tremendous, American, very vibrant city with hotels and restaurants, and it was state capital of New Jersey, and now it's really become a political city and very little industry. But when my dad had a sporting goods store in Trenton was a great baseball town, and had tremendous athletic. Al Downing was from Trenton. Bo Belinsky was from Trenton. My dad was from Trenton. So, a very strong baseball connection. And also, we're talking a little bit about basketball, but the first professional basketball team, believe it or not the invention of the game, but the first professional team was from Trenton.
Who did they play?
They played in a little, tiny gym, and they called them cagers back then because they played basketball in a cage.
Who was their opponent if they were the first?
Well, they played, a couple, whether it be local teams or whatever. Sort of like, the original Cincinnati Reds in baseball. Who did they play? So, the fact is that Trenton was where the players were being paid to play, and they would play against other, amateur teams or whatever with no salaries, or they're just playing for the fun of it. But they were actually the first professional basketball team to be paid for their basketball ability.
I knew Al Downing was from Trenton, but I didn't know about Bo Belinsky. What a story.
Yeah, Bo Belinsky lived in Trenton. He wasn't born in Trenton. Al Downing was born in Trenton. My dad was born in Trenton, but Bo Belinsky, I think, was born in New York, but he grew up in Trenton and was, during his, younger days, I've mentioned this to other people, he was known more for being a pool shark than he was a baseball player. So when he went to California and was pitching out there with the Angels, I mean, that was like probably the worst place that he could have gone, because he was also somebody who liked to live high, and he met all movie stars and did all the Hollywood stuff, and it really affected his baseball career, where if he had been in another town which didn't have all that Hollywood glamour, he probably would have done much better.
Well, would all three of us not be affected by, or all four of us not be affected by maybe Van Doren, I'm wondering.
Yes, that's for sure. It was maybe Van Doren.
That was Bo. Maybe Van Doren. I think he also dated Joe Collins, who had been Playmate player, Playboy Player of the Year, and named Joe Collins.
Playboy Bunny of the Year.
Yeah, Bunny was a
Playmate of the Year.
That's right.
Playmate of the Year. That was the title.
I knew George had a great memory for baseball, but we're just finding out that George has a memory for Hawaii.
That's just some trivia that I do. Being a local guy, I remember some of the newspaper articles about Bo.
George, you only lust in your heart.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. Is that better? Al, do you lust maybe Van Doren occasionally? Have you ever? It's not a
not really, but I think there were ones that were better with. I think the Yankees, Judge just the home run, and the Yankees are ahead now.
Oh, good. Oh, okay.
We're talking about the important things now.
Yeah, by the way.
Yes. And pray for tomorrow. You want to keep it alive, for sure.
I think Bock did a minor league stint in Hawaii, because they had a team in the Coast League for a number of years out there.
Well, you know what? You mentioned that, Alan, and we're talking what Ralph talked about, farm clubs being local. When my dad was with the Washington Senators, he was managing the Hawaii Islanders, which were their AAA club in the Pacific Coast League. So you can imagine the time change and the difference between Hawaii and Washington, D.C. When they were going to call up a player, it would take him a day or two to get acclimated, before he was even able to put his uniform on.
Wow. Tell us, let's go around the horn a little bit, your memories of Dolph. And I'll tell you my memories. Dolph Schayes, who became famous in Syracuse. Interestingly enough, Hal Bock, who's not here tonight, went to NYU, sent his kid to Syracuse, and Dolph Schayes went to NYU.
Yes. I can talk about him because he not only
and sent his kid to Syracuse.
Yes, in fact, I'll tell you something. Dolph Schayes not only went to NYU, where I went with Hal, but he also played basketball at my old high school, DeWitt Clinton, in the Bronx.
My father went there.
Did he? Yeah. It's funny how many people you run into and say, "Yeah, my father went there. My uncle went there."
I think it was.
Yeah, they were a city powerhouse in basketball, and Schayes periodically would come back to the gym and shoot baskets with the kids. His son actually played for NYU in the early 60s.
Danny?
What?
Danny Schayes?
Danny
played for Syracuse.
Danny played for Syracuse. I forget. I'm quite sure it was his other son. He had another son who played at NYU. Anyway, Schayes was a big hero in the school, and of course, well remembered at NYU. He moved up to Syracuse, when he played for the Nats up there, and like I say, he was always remembered. His pictures were in the hallways, the walkway leading into the gym at Clinton, and he was an all-around good athlete. And if I remember correctly, he actually graduated high school at about age 16, and graduated from NYU. Yeah, he was about 20. He was quite young and precocious, and of course he was big. So he had that great one-hand set shot. And then he would follow up his shots by charging into the old key, for rebounds. So he was an all-around.
And not only that, when he made a shot, he would put his right arm up in like Smith did at the Olympics, if you remember. And he'd run down the court like shaking that right arm like I made it, and it was just a gesture of power. And he was a hell of a shooter.
He was.
I wanted to bring up something about that, and I know Alan would fill us in, but I believe when Dolph Schayes was playing with Syracuse, they were the Syracuse Nationals, and Rochester Royals with Bobby Davies, who I knew, Bobby Wanzer, and all those players, Neil Johnson with the Philadelphia Warriors, and I think the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons and the Minnesota, Lakers with George Mikan.
Lakers, yeah.
But they were, Alan, weren't they the original?
Minneapolis, they called them.
Yeah, weren't they the original NBA where you had like only 6 or 8 teams?
They were in the NBL.
NBL, right? Okay.
And there was after 2 years, the NBL was on shaky financial grounds, and the Lakers, the Pistons, the Rochester Royals, and there was a team from Indianapolis, which had 2 of the Kentucky fixers. Alex Groza and Ralph Beard that went into the NBA, and then the next year Syracuse came in with a bunch of teams that didn't last past the one season. Sheboygan and Oshkosh, they had a whole bunch of teams.
I just want to note that Alex Groza was Lou Groza,
his brother,
Pitino's brother.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was second in the NBA in scoring for the 2 years he was there before he was expelled because of the Kentucky point shaving scandal.
What became of these
for
guys?
For some reason, I remember, whether it be Syracuse or Rochester, I remember watching the games on television, and they played in an arena. I think it was called the Onondaga Memorial Coliseum.
Yes, right.
Mm-hmm. I was up in Syracuse years ago for a Pitt football game. I told my friend I have to go past that place just to genuflect. Still there.
Yeah. So it was Syracuse then, right?
It was Syracuse.
Alan? Yeah. Okay.
They also, I want to ask, what became of some of these players that were involved in the scandal and suspended? Did they play pickup leagues, semi-pro?
Probably. It's very unclear. I know there's a league that operated in the East called the Eastern League.
Right.
That's right. Yeah.
A couple of grades lower, and I think some of the suspended players could play there because I don't think they were that strict. But the NBA, because of what happened in the colleges, the NBA went, from being the stepson of the college basketball to one of the head of the college basketball and public image because of the scandals.
Right. I remember when the Warriors moved out here in 1960. Paul Harrison was 62, I think it was.
Paul Harrison would not move with them.
He wouldn't. He played in the Eastern League.
I know he had an off-season job as a salesman for IBM, and his roots were there. He didn't want to pick up a move.
But he played weekend ball in the AB in the Eastern League for a while after that. So
one of the other teams up that way was the Albany Patroons.
Yeah, and obviously because Philadelphia was 1 year without an NBA team, and then Syracuse moved down there in 1960.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, Alan. That's right. The Syracuse Nationals left Syracuse to come to Philadelphia, right?
And a good part of that team, that Larry Costello, I think even Dave Gamby,
Hal Greer was there, and
Hal Greer was there. Came from Syracuse.
Walker, I think, played 1 year at Syracuse before. Yeah,
that was and Lucius Jackson and Wilt. That could have been as good a team as we've seen. I think was that when Bobby Jones came off the bench, if I'm not mistaken.
That was '67. That was the year they beat the Celtics. Won the championship. Okay. Yeah. That team was terrific.
Al, another sport, you're an encyclopedia.
Yeah, well, you asked me to name 5 players in some of these teams that played last year. I couldn't do it.
That's
the way I am too, Alan.
Yeah, all of us are the same way.
Right.
And where are my keys? We can't remember where we left our keys, but we could remember.
What happened in some ball game 60 years ago, but where you put something 5 minutes, you can't remember.
One of the big things I remember about the old NBA was that if you went to the old Garden, and that's one of our topics, very often you could get, they played double headers. So you could get the whole Eastern Division in one night. The 9:30 game would be the Knicks versus the Celtics, and Syracuse would play Philadelphia in the opening game. So you could see two pro games for the price of one.
You see half the NBA right there.
That's right, exactly.
Me going down for autographs and just going absolutely berserk because
they used to have a 72-game schedule, and they play in the division 12 times and out of the division 9 times. So you got to know everybody.
Right.
Like one of the you play teams, out of the division. You play them twice a year.
One of the best places to get autographs was not Madison Square Garden, but the Knicks played a good number of games at the old 69th Regiment Armory.
Go there occasionally too.
Right.
Because the circus would be at the Garden or the rodeo, so they played at this very small. The court was the regulation size, but they didn't hold very many fans. But I can remember going out before a game and the Knicks were coming in, and I forget whose bag I carried to the locker room. I mean, that's how intimate it was, you know.
Absolutely. And they would stay at the Biltmore and the Roosevelts, which was like 3 or 4 blocks away.
Mm-hmm.
And you oftentimes could catch the players on the way from the Biltmore. You could catch them having breakfast sometimes.
Yeah, they were easy to spot.
Yes, it was. Speaking of that, I remember getting Oscar Robertson and Jack Twyman's autograph at the little coffee shop at the Biltmore one day, and I couldn't believe that this was for a kid. That was that was a big day. That was a big day. Tell me about George Yardley. George Yardley played with Dolph Schayes at Syracuse.
George Yardley was played at Stanford, college at Stanford. He had an engineering degree. He played, I think, a year or two in the AAU. He didn't turn pro right away.
Okay.
And then he went to the Pistons. And if you looked at him, you didn't think that this guy could stand up by himself, let alone be a top-notch basketball player. And he had several years with the Pistons. He was the first player in the league to score 2,000 points. I think he got something like 27 the last game of the season to finish in 2001. And then after that, they traded him to Pistons traded him to the Nats for a forward for them named Ed Conlon. And Yardley played a year and a half with the Syracuse before he retired and went full-time into engineering.
Now, Alan, wasn't the where George? George Yardley played for, wasn't it called the Fort Wayne Zollner Pistons?
Initially, yeah, they moved after 56, 57. They moved from Fort Wayne to Detroit and Rochester to Cincinnati.
Right. But I think they dropped the name Zollner after a while.
Yeah,
I think it was
wasn't it Fred Zollner or something was the owner?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they could keep, because Detroit was a Motor City, they could keep the Pistons name.
Yeah.
It didn't, it was very convenient.
Yeah.
And I think Ed Conlon ended up with the Philadelphia Warriors right at the end of his career. Maybe you remember that, George.
Who was that?
Ed Conlon.
Ed Conlon, yeah. I saw Ed Conlon play I think he played at Fordham.
I think he did, yes.
I remember watching him when I was in high school. Fordham used to televise their basketball games, and I remember, Ed Conlon was a huge star at Fordham.
Right. Big transition between college ball and pro ball. A lot of guys were really great in college and didn't pan out in the pros.
I could give you one great example of that.
Please.
Again, it gets into that sort of upper New York State tier around Syracuse, Schenectady. All-American Barry Kramer at NYU.
Oh God, yeah.
Yes. Oh.
I mean, he literally could float. And you wondered when he was going to come back down to the ground. All-American in his junior and senior year, tremendous scorer, good forward, good shooter, went into the NBA, and I think he lasted a season.
And his teammate was Happy Hairston.
And I was going to say, and Happy Hairston lasted a long time with the Lakers, and I think he started with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
And he went in unheralded. Yeah. And of course, the best of that group was Satch Sanders from NYU, who went in and played 13 seasons with the Celtics.
Yeah, but I thought they had 9-10 rings for crying out loud.
Yeah, we all thought when he was drafted by the Celtics, that's the end of him. I mean, how's he going to compete and make the Celtics? But he did a great job on defense with that team for many years, and he wound up coaching Harvard for a number of years.
Right.
And he still is involved in basketball for some of it.
Well, you mentioned Satch Sanders. I have to throw this out. My first college game playing at Rutgers, I'm a sophomore. I'm assigned to play against Satch Sanders, who was a first-team All-American at NYU.
Yeah.
Finally, I went to the coach after Sanders probably scored 40 points off me in the first 10 minutes of the game. I said, "Coach, take me out. I'm embarrassed." I mean, he jumped right over my head. I mean, he was a tremendous college player and went on to a tremendous pro career.
I'll tell you a little secret about Satch Sanders. Yeah. Sanders, at the time Sanders was at NYU. Yeah. NYU had one of the top fencing schools in the country, and among the great fencers, by the way, at NYU was. Let me go back. Sanders, the coaches said he would have been one of the best fencers in the world had he stuck with it. He had great reach, great reflexes, and he dabbled with it with the team. But the coaches, who was the Olympic coach at the time, said that Tom Sanders would have made it fantastic fencer. World-class fencer.
I can imagine, David, when you're talking about him. I mean, my memory of him, because when he was playing NYU, first team All-American, Lou Rossini was the NYU coach.
That's right.
And
that's right.
I mean, I was terrified. I go out on the floor. I'm a sophomore, and here I am. I'm going to play against the great Satch Sanders, and I finally had to take the coach. Said, "Hey, coach, take me out. I'm really embarrassed." I mean, he was sensational.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was not a big scorer. He was not a big scorer in the NBA.
Game of the Thursday night doubleheaders all the time.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. And Hal and I covered those games for a couple of years there. The sports writers on the paper.
David.
Well, he was very much of an intellectual too. I mean, he wasn't just an athlete.
Yes. Oh, yes.
He was very cerebral, and I think, like you said, David, he coached at Harvard. He had all those great years with the Celtics, and I think he was always a terrific interview because he was so, his ability to communicate was tremendous.
I thought, you talk about these.
Cal Ramsey, he was a guy I thought of as a terrific college player who didn't really become a great pro.
No, you're right. He played with the Knicks for a bit, and he had a long career as a Knicks color announcer.
Yeah.
After one interesting thing, when I went into NYU, I was about 18 years old, fresh out of high school, and I was sitting in the cafeteria one day having lunch, and this big guy comes over and he says, "Do you mind if I sit down?" And I recognized him instantly, of course, it was Cal Ramsey. And I'm thinking, I'm sitting here with Cal Ramsey, like it was the President of the United States. I was so in awe. We spoke a bit, but I just cherished that particular moment that he came and just chose my table to sit down. There was no one else but the two of us.
Let me tell you a story that you'll like. I had Cal Ramsey on one day, and he told that same story about meeting you in the second series.
Yes.
And he carried that story. He said, that man wrote a book.
Not at the time, but he was very prescient. That was one of his. But the other point I wanted to make about great fencers, and for the moment, like we're having a senior moment, if I mention to you one of the great singers and entertainers of this era, who wrote and sang many, many great songs like Cherry, and
Neil Sedaka?
No. He actually started a couple of movies. One of them was the remake of the Jazz Singer, and it was not very good.
Neil Diamond.
Neil Diamond, thank you.
Yeah.
Neil Diamond was a tremendous fencer at NYU. He was on yes, very few people know it. In fact, I can recall a few years after, and if you look back on the clips of the NYU sports pages, you'll see Neil Diamond's name, as I think he fenced Sabre, if I'm not mistaken. But a few years later, the old Merv Griffith show, he was on, and he was singing and stuff, and Merv Griffith asked him about that, and he said, "Oh yeah," and he gave a fencing demonstration to the audience.
Wow.
That's really interesting, David. I never knew that. I love Neil Diamond. I mean, I think he's a tremendous talent. And I think in fencing, I mean, I'm not a fencing person, but I think aren't there 3 classes? There's épée, foil, and saber, I think.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And that's what they use, I think, in the Olympics. And I'm not sure how good we are as a country in fencing, but, back then I think we were pretty good. And a lot of collegiate fencers probably went into the Olympic Games, to compete.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we're rated number 1 in fencing and number 77 in civil rights as a country. So
I remember the Italian and the French Olympic teams were usually
we're going
tops.
a long way, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. Go back. Come on, Ralph. Bring us back.
I'll bring us back to the NYU games. I want to know, there was a kid named Ernst.
Vinny Ernst?
No. I'm sorry. I make this mistake. Mark
Reiner.
Yeah.
Mark Reiner from Brooklyn. Yeah. Mark Reiner.
I think it was from Canarsie. He might have been from Erasmus with Bernie Kersner. Lincoln. He was from Lincoln with Bernie Kersner, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, he was a tremendous shooter. Just a tremendous shooter.
Right, little blonde guy.
Yep, that's right.
Deep teams in that East. Lenny Wilkins came out of Providence. St. Bonaventure. Tell us about St. Bonaventure, Al Blumkin.
Well, they had very, very good teams. Unfortunately, when Eddie Donovan was running the Knicks, he seemed to draft these guys out of St. Bonaventure. And, unfortunately, Tom Stiff, who might have been a very good pro, came down with tuberculosis. but he made several draft choices out of St. Bonaventure that turned out to be awful. He drafted one year.
Did he coach? Did Donovan coach at the same
coach there? And then he came to the Knicks, and they made him general manager. And he brought the one in particular. He brought in 1 year a point guard named Brendan McCann. It was absolutely horrible.
Didn't John Thompson play for St. Bonaventure?
No, John Thompson was at
Providence. Yeah. That's right. Yep.
I'll tell you, one of the St. Bonaventure players I recall when I first got in the athletic shoe business was Bob Lanier.
Oh yeah.
And Bob Lanier, I'll never forget, I tried to get him to wear our shoes, and he said to me, he says, well, if you can make me a shoe, he said, I wear size 22.
Wow.
Whoa.
Huge.
One year they made it to the semifinals in the NCAA. This is when UCLA was winning every year, and he tore his knee up in the semifinal against Villanova.
Mm.
And he couldn't play after that. And they wound up losing that game, and I think they got knocked out in the semifinals.
Well, I remember him as being just a really big physical player.
Yeah, he was a specimen.
Right.
Hey, guys, does the name Wayne Estes?
Yeah, he was at Utah State. He scored 48 points in the game, then left the game and walked into a high wire.
He left that very game?
Yeah.
Wow.
That happened when I was at either at Pitt or a year out of Pitt. That sent shockwaves all over the place.
And it killed him?
Yeah.
After
he had a 48-point game again.
I didn't know that.
Whoever they were playing that night. One of the things I'd like to mention about Dolph Schayes, I discussed this with Ralph in an earlier podcast. Dolph Schayes was the first in line of disastrous Knick mistakes. I think Ralph and I did a podcast on that one night.
We talked the whole night about their mistakes. They drafted the kid with the heart problem.
And the Knicks could have had Dolph Schayes. They offered him $5,000, and Syracuse offered him $7,000 a year. That Irish would go above it, so they lost him.
Yeah, incredible. And the salaries were so pitifully low for these guys. Most of them were like the old baseball players did.
Yeah.
But,
But no unions whatsoever. At least the baseball players into the 50s started getting union benefits. Basketball had none of that.
No.
But Dick Grote told me years ago that he would rather, he played 26 games for the Pistons in 52-53 before he went to the Army, and he told me that he would have rather played basketball while coming out of the Army, but Branch Rickey convinced him to stay with baseball because basketball in those days wasn't paying anything.
No, the college game was much followed much more avidly than the pros. It was very easy to get down to the Garden and get tickets.
Oh yeah.
Well, speaking of the college game, I'm going to quote Hugh McElhenney. They asked him in his first year as a pro, "What was your biggest adjustment?" And he said, "The pay cut." So the times they are changing, and they're staying pretty much the same as they were. It was college ball was semi-pro back then on some level, and it is today.
You want to get into Ralph? You want to get into the Rick Pitino Louisville situation?
If you want to give us an update, that would be
the only update I can give you is that I heard this morning that Rick Pitino was officially fired.
Yeah.
By Louisville.
Oh, really?
Right.
Wow.
Right.
That's the third major scandal that we've had
it is.
College ball?
And they all happen to involve Rick Pitino too. So.
No, not all of them. The first one.
No, but two of them, David, were very much part of Rick Pitino.
That was the coaches. The first two were players.
Yeah.
Right. Players.
Well, they haven't finished the pro with this one yet. We'll see.
Right. Well, the thing about when you're talking about the money and all, I mean, Rick Pitino, I think his contract with Louisville was something like $8 million a year.
It was incredible. Yeah, just
right.
The same old story is that the players get paid nothing, and especially now, they're bringing all sorts of revenue.
Right.
The university from playing. They got very little, and coaches are under such pressure now because everything is national.
Right.
Yeah.
They put themselves under pressure to win at all costs, and they do things.
No, and I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, I think the Louisville situation is really the tip of the iceberg. When it comes to college basketball, because I know for a fact a lot of this stuff has been going on for years. It was really under the table, and now it's being brought out. But there's been a lot of abuses, and right.
Yeah.
And the NCAA found nothing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Which is sort of bizarre because, apparently from what I understand in North Carolina, the players, the football players are taking non-existent courses or whatever courses they're taking. The exams are being taken by, a student and all that kind of stuff. So, those kind of things have been going on for a long time. But now the Louisville thing, which bothers me, is that it's now starting to reach down into the high schools. And that, to me, is a very slippery slope. And so
yes. You're right, George.
I hope they crack down on it really big time in a hurry, because if not, it's going to be a disaster.
It's AAU business.
Well, that's what was wrong with the PED scandal. It doesn't, if a player wants to take anything knowingly and put it into his body and risk the ill effects that go with it down the road or immediately or whatever, that's fine. They're professionals. That's good. But when it gets to high school, when these players have an influence, like a Rodriguez could do what he does and rehabilitate himself and go on, he may be the next manager of the Yankees, for crying out loud. What kind of message does it send to the high school kids?
Yeah.
And it's a societal thing. It's not like sports is any different than what we're getting in government, in the churches and synagogues. The hierarchy of big business is corrupt all over. So I'm sad to say that it's societal, and sports is just a microcosm of that. And I couldn't think of a more depressing way to end the show. If not,
all right. In case anybody's interested, Yankees 6, Astros 4 final.
Thank you. Wow.
I want to make one more comment about this link between New York and Syracuse, and it brings back NYU in its heyday there in the early '60s. NYU set the Madison Square Garden record, which I don't know whether it stands or not, for the most points scored against an opponent in a college basketball game when they beat Syracuse, like 132 to, you could probably look it up, it's 61, I think it was. And because in those days Syracuse was a national football power, and they didn't put much money or emphasis on basketball, so they had pretty crummy teams. Of course, now it's totally reversed. They have great basketball teams, and the football teams are not doing very well at all.
Is the team you spoke of, did that have Dave Bing on it in '61?
No, I don't think so.
Bing was a contemporary of mine. In fact,
so when did
this is so long ago that when Pitt used to play home and home with, they still do. They play home and home basketball games with every year, and Bing came in. I think 3 times when I was going there. He was contemporary. And also, one of the other players of those teams was Jim Boeheim.
Oh, right, yeah.
Gone on to coach there for 30 years or whatever.
Yeah, Boeheim was a longtime coach at Syracuse, and, was one of the, he really built the Syracuse program into a national power.
Yeah.
And, right.
Isn't he still there?
I met Jim quite a few times when I was in the athletic footwear business, and he had a long career at Syracuse.
Oh, I saw him play. That gives you an indication of how old I am.
Did he wear Alan? Did he wear glasses then? Because did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, Dave Bing wound up as mayor of Detroit.
He had a coaching scandal a few years ago. There was I think his name was Fine.
Yeah, he was an assistant to Boeheim.
The Knicks took
Did you get to know him at all over the years?
No, I only knew the name. I didn't remember meeting him, but I certainly knew Boeheim. But I knew of the scandal, and it did involve, one of his assistant coaches.
Yeah. The Knicks took Cassie Russell over Dave Bing in that year's draft.
Yeah, well, that wasn't such a bad choice.
Well, Dave Bing was terrific.
Oh yeah,
as he was kind of a role player. He was good, overachiever.
Yeah, well, Cassie
somebody
Russell
just
was
come on.
tweener. He was uncomfortable with.
Yes.
They wound up using him at small forward because then he duplicated Bill Bradley's skills, and they traded him for Jerry Lucas. But they tried when they came to the Knicks, they tried to use him as a guard, and he just couldn't play that position.
Hey guys, I'd like you to meet Eric Chapman. Eric Chapman is a native Jackson Heightser. Lived on 91st Street, as did I. As a matter of fact, we lived at one time or another in the exact same, not only the same apartment building, but the same apartment, literally, apartment 201. And Eric is living in Syracuse. He's tell us about Cuse and how cool it is that the Mets are going to be their farm system, Mr. Chapman.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, it was
pretty cool.
It was pretty. They interrupted television broadcasting to give them announcement of it.
I can tell that David Hubler is a Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Am I right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We did go with the Washington Nationals, but I'm going to like this better.
Yeah.
It's going to be all New York hookup now. We got
in-state team.
Double A
Yeah.
is Binghamton, and you got Single A down in the Brooklyn Cyclones, I believe, is Single A.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, right. Mm-hmm.
Makes it much easier to scout the players along the way, and makes it much easier to call up players in the event of emergencies and what have you.
Yeah.
Eric, as a native New Yorker, you lived up in Washington when you were in the Navy. Tell me
He stayed out there too.
It's about living in Syracuse, as in living in New York, the city.
What was that? What was that?
The major differences of living in New York City as opposed to Syracuse, sports-wise. Let's put it that way.
Well, sports-wise, definitely you're more on top of the action here. We're right on top of it. Pumping gas at Hess gas station right next to Bryce Harper, when he was down, before he went up to Washington. Steven Strasburg shopping at the grocery stores. You know what I mean?
Reminds you of Brooklyn in the old days when the Dodgers would shop in the neighborhoods and actually be neighborhood people.
That's right,
I like that. The old-timers at the farmers market still talk about Thurman Munson and Rod Guidry coming to, shop at the farmers market there when Syracuse had the Yankees as their farm team. It was back in the 70s. And then they had a long run with Toronto. We were with the Blue Jays from 78 to 2008, I believe. And then the Nationals took over,
How does that affect the local fans to have the team affiliations change like that?
Well, some people, most people they're really psyched about having the Mets. I guess Chuck Schumer tried to make it happen 10 years ago before the Nationals took over, and it fell through. So he pushed for it. Mario Cuomo was just here. All of them were just at the stadium a few days ago, right at the stadium. They had a big news conference, and Syracuse is like a Green Acres kind of city.
Mm-hmm. They didn't name the new Mets coach.
We're ticket holders for the Syracuse Crunch hockey games, and we literally, it's the old barn, the War Memorial they play in, where the Nationals played, where they filmed Slapshot with Paul Newman. We walk to our seats. We go through the locker rooms where the play, and these guys are just one step down from the Tampa Bay Lightning. they're in their skates and their underwear and their jock straps. And they got their torches. They're curving up their stick. We walk right through that. I mean, we high-five them. We're like right on top of it here. And then
wow.
You can't ask for better hockey here at the old barn.
Yeah, we mentioned the old Onondaga War Memorial earlier in the show.
I love it.
Eric, tell us about the city's love affair with the late Dolph Schayes. We were talking about Dolph.
Oh yeah, we love him.
Too, and Danny was up in Syracuse to go to school. Tell us about that, if you would, Eric.
Well, I mean, he's been to the games here. You know, he just passed away, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was close to 90, wasn't he? About 90.
What, 1990?
No, I said he was about 90 years old.
Almost 90 years old.
No, I don't think he was pushing 90, yeah. We met him, God, it was 2 years ago. We met him and the remaining nationals, the ones that were left, are some big boys, let me tell you. And Dolph Schayes' kids look just like him, and they're even a head taller than him. I swear they're like 7'2" when I stand next to him.
Wow.
They're big. Same with, Danny Baldwin, the Baldwin brothers. We just seen him yesterday shopping at Lowe's. That dude's huge also. He's got to be looks like he's about 6'8". Oh, my God, I didn't know he's that tall. They're all tall.
Does Syracuse bring Jimmy Brown back every now and again, Eric?
What's that?
Does Syracuse bring Jimmy Brown back every now and again?
Yeah, Jimmy Brown. He was just up here, too. Carmelo Anthony comes through here a lot. I tell you, a lot of players that came through Syracuse, it like hooks them. They come back here. You know, John Morasti, one of the, from an Indian from Saskatchewan playing for the Syracuse Crunch. He ended up staying here, and his wife goes to SU now, and people just get hooked into Syracuse just kind of the way I did, I think. I fell in love with the place.
And Ralph, I have to run.
I love it,
Ralph?
Yes.
I have to
Al, we'll
run.
see you next time. Thank you for being here.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
See ya.
Take it easy.
Anything any of you guys want to add to it?
Well, for me, I've enjoyed this, and I have to leave too, but I just wanted to say welcome to the group, and, it's very enlightening for me. I'm glad to share some old stories and old memories, because you guys would remember if I talked to my own kids about it, they look at me like I'm some kind of person from Mars. They have no idea who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Well,
I always enjoy it, and I'll talk to you folks next week.
Eric, I just want to tell you what a fanatical fan Eric is. He's got a suitcase full of baseball cards, and he's kept all these years. So any fan that can say that is welcome back here on these airwaves anytime. As you are, Eric, please come back.
Thanks, Ralphie.
Great.
All right, my friend.
I'll see everybody. Yep. Good night.
Be good. Thank you. We'll see you Sunday. And George too.
Okay. Take care.
Senator Show on Goose Gosling on the Senator Show that we do. And if you listened all the way through, I thank you, everybody. Keep on keeping on. It's Ralph Tyko's Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The show is Vintage Sports from the Old Garden on 48th Street, right by Nedick's. Thanks, everybody. Adios.
Adios, Ralphie.